Hi, I'm Karen Terrell with Media Survival Group and the PIO Academy. I'm a former reporter, former PIO, and over the years I have learned a lot about how to survive a media interview. In fact, I'm a little presumptuous here. I'm going to assume I can tell you how to ace a media interview. I've got 10 tips. So sit back, relax, join me, and let's talk about the media interview and how you can do your absolute best. Number one, first tip right out of the gate, it's probably no surprise to you, prepare. It is absolutely the most important thing you can do. I don't care how experienced you are, how many interviews you've done. If that reporter calls and says, I'd like to interview you this afternoon, you say, fine, let me think about it. What kinds of things do you want to talk about? Where is it going? And then you give some thought. And I want you to ask yourself these questions. What is my message to the public? What do I want the public to know? What do I want them to hear? And by the way, if you don't have a message, you don't have any evergreen messages laying around, which you should have, but let's say you don't, and there's nothing going on, I'd suggest you pass on that interview because it's a risk. All interviews come with risks. When you go on the camera with a reporter, you could misspeak, you could make a mistake that could haunt you for the rest of your career. So make sure there's a benefit to balance out that risk. So let's say you do have a very important message. Then I want you to ask yourself these questions. What am I going to say? What won't I say? What questions do I expect that reporter to ask? And what answers am I going to give when he does ask that question? Let me give you an example. Let's say your message is, you have been called to get the community to evacuate. Let's say you've got a dam that's getting ready to break, okay, and it's a life-threatening emergency, and you want people to evacuate from a particular part of a particular community, head in a particular direction, and go to a particular site, an evacuation center, and you want them to do it right now. You're going to use that reporter to get that message to your community. So that's your message. Evacuate immediately, head north on Highway 1 and go to the fairgrounds where we've got an evacuation center set up. And you begin that message with the all-important announcement, that dam is getting ready to break. Okay, so you ask yourself, what will I say? What you'll say is something like this. We have a life and death emergency facing our community. We are asking everyone in the south part of Central City to evacuate within the next 2 minutes. Pack up your family, pack up your pets, your important paperwork, any medications you need, what you need to sustain you for the next 72 hours. Scoop it up, get in the car, and go north on Highway 1 to the evacuation center that we've set up at the Earl Warren Showgrounds. Evacuate immediately. Now, you might repeat that over and over and just keep saying, this is very, very important. Now, what you won't say. You probably have some background information. You may know that that dam hasn't been inspected for a while. It hasn't been on schedule. Let's say you know behind the scenes that that crack has been forming on the dam for 72 hours and people have kind of been sitting on that information. Obviously, you're not going to say that now. This is not the time for stuff like that to come up. So your next question you ask yourself, what if a reporter asks me that? What might that reporter ask? Let's say the reporter does ask you something like, why now? You're giving us 2 minutes notice. All of a sudden this dam's getting ready to break. Who's to blame for this? Your answer, of course, is something like, well, those kinds of things will be investigated and it'll come out in the investigative report, and that's a matter of public record. But now's not the time to talk about that. We are facing a life and death emergency here. We need people to evacuate immediately. That dam is getting ready to break, blah, blah, blah. That's called a bridge. Okay, you give that question a little respect because you don't want to look evasive or defensive. But you need to give that question a little respect and then bridge to your answer. And that answer will always take you right back to your message, which is how we started this whole discussion in the first place. So your number one rule, prepare, prepare, prepare by asking yourself, what's my message? What am I going to say? What am I not going to say? Questions the reporter might ask, answers that you're going to give. Okay, the next question that you should ask yourself is, how can I distinguish this interview from a conversation, because interviews are not conversations. I've had reporters over the years, in fact, I've probably said it when I was a reporter to people, oh, come on, let's just talk. Don't worry about it. Well, an interview is not a conversation. If you go on Google and you just Google the word conversation, something like this visual comes up. I think this was taken probably from a Jane Austen movie, but look at the body language that's going on here. All these people are on an equal keel. It looks like an even playing field. It looks kind of spontaneous because it appears to have happened in an open public forum. It looks lighthearted. It looks sort of random, you know, they just appear to be chatting. It doesn't look like there's much planning or strategy going on. Well, that's what a conversation looks like. It's sort of a loosely defined exchange of words. This is what an interview looks like. Very, very different type of body language. You've got one person taking one role, the other person taking the other role. And you can see one of them looks like more of the aggressor, the other looks like more of the recipient of that aggression. And this is what it looks like from the person being interviewed. This is what it looks like to stare into a camera. Totally different from having a conversation. These are just some of the ways in which I distinguish between a conversation and an interview. Conversations can be spontaneous. Interviews should be planned. Both the reporter and you should plan that interview. Secondly, a conversation can be casual, just very, kind of loose, using slang and things like that. An interview should never be casual. It should be formal. You choose your words carefully. You articulate your points in a very declarative manner. You speak with authority. Totally different than a chat. A conversation can be friendly. An interview really shouldn't be friendly. It's a professional job. It's a task. It's an assignment. And it's something you do for a living, for your work. It is not a friendly chat. A conversation can be rambling. You can get all off track and go down different sidebars and stuff like that. That's not the way an interview should be conducted. An interview is goal-directed. The reporter is looking for a soundbite and a good story. You're looking to get a message out to your community. Goals at the end of this process. A conversation can be meaningless. You can have a conversation and an hour later you barely remember it. An interview can be career-defining. You can do an interview that can absolutely determine how you'll be thought of for a long time to come. A conversation can fade into history. An interview can resonate for the rest of your career. Take this seriously. Do it differently. An interview has a goal, a strategy, and tactics. You don't go into a conversation with goals and strategies and tactics, but you should in an interview. And let me just give you an example. Let's say that you work for a blood bank and your goal is to increase blood donations, okay? That reporter's goal is to get a decent soundbite or a quotable quote. Okay, let's say your strategy is to use the mass media to distribute key messages. Well, I can tell you that reporter's strategy is to use you to get a decent story. Let's say that your tactic is during that on-camera interview, you're going to use techniques such as the bridge, the hook, the flag, to repeat messages as many times as possible. The reporter's tactic is to ask brilliant, probing questions to get you to give them something tasty, okay? Totally different approach. Now, given all those distinctions, let's talk about how you stay on message using the bridge, the hook, and the flag. And by the way, don't worry about redundancy. Redundancy is a good thing. So I want you to put a bridge in your pocket, put a hook in your pocket, and put a flag in your pocket. And all I'm talking about is a collection of words that will serve those three goals. Okay, so what do I mean by a bridge, a hook, and a flag? Well, let's take them one at a time. Imagine that your message is in the upper left-hand corner of your screen there, and in the bottom right-hand corner is the reporter's question. You need to form a verbal bridge using words to get you from that reporter's question to your message. So remember I said earlier, let's say the reporter asks you why all of a sudden now we have this emergency and didn't you see this coming and whose fault is this? You give it a little respect. You say that the cause, of course, cause and origin will be part of the investigative documents, and that'll be public record soon. But right now, we have to save lives, and the best way to do that is to evacuate immediately. So a bridge gets you to your message, just using words to get you to your message. So when I say a hook, what in the world does that mean? All it means is simply pulling some kind of a connection between your message and a news hook. What's going on in the world? Finding a connection that feels contemporary, feels relevant to the listener, and makes these people sitting on their couch at home care about what you're saying. And a flag, all that is saying a few words on tape so that when the reporter's listening later, they hear those words and they say, I need to listen. The flag just says to the reporter, pay attention, reporter, to the next thing I say, because you should use it in your story. Okay, let me give you an example of what I mean by all that. We go back to the blood bank. A reporter asks you, okay, how many people have gotten AIDS from donated blood in the history of the world? Okay, quite a question, right? Your answer might be something like this. Well, I don't have the answer to that particular question at my fingertips, but I can tell you this. That's called a bridge. Okay, give it a little respect, build a bridge. So there's your bridge. More than 100 lives were saved in our community last year. And according to the Journal of the American Medical Association, which was released this morning, okay, that would be called a hook. Okay, that's a news hook. It connects your message to what's going on in the world right here, right now. There is one simple way that almost anyone can save a life. That's a flag. The reporter is listening to that playback and saying, okay, one simple way, I gotta listen, what is it? Donate blood. Okay? There's a bridge, a hook, and a flag that get you from the reporter's question to your message and connect it. Okay, rule number 4, speak officially. Reporters are always going to ask you what's your personal opinion about various things. I really encourage you, stay in your lane. Don't give personal opinions and stay on the record. Reporters are going to say, well, come on, that's the official line, I know, but what do you think? I recommend you look that reporter straight in the face with a pleasant expression on your face and just say, well, you know, I'm not here to express my personal opinions. This is what I can tell you. When I say stay in your lane, what I mean by that is, if you're a PIO, don't speak for another PIO's organization. Don't speak in an area that you're not authorized to speak. You get yourself in trouble, you get a bad rep, and it can just really haunt you for a long, long time. You should know what you're authorized to say, what you're not authorized to say. And by the way, if you're a government official or work in any kind of government agency, usually you just ask yourself, what's a matter of public record? What is public record and what isn't? And that's pretty much what you can say. And always, always, always stay on the record. If a reporter says to you, oh, come on, can't you just give me that off the record? I won't use attribution to you. I recommend, again, look them straight in the face, pleasant look on your face, and just say, I live on the record. This is what I can tell you. It'll just keep you out of trouble. Okay, rule number 5, stick to the facts. Don't guess, don't speculate, don't estimate. You know, there are so many examples down through the years where people have speculated, especially about the number of bodies that might be in a particular situation at the scene of a mass fatality. When I hear people speculate, I always think, you know, the absolute best thing that can happen is that they're right. And that's really, first of all, that's not likely, and secondly, that's not much of a reward anyway, even if they are right. Most of the time, I think that it's best to just stick with what you know. We can confirm this many fatalities. We are looking for more. We're investigating now. And kind of leave it at that, you know, especially if it's something sensitive, such as fatalities. Now, this visual that you're looking at here is reporter Yvette Fernandez. And by the way, she, as I said, is the reporter. The man with the clipboard and the pencil checking the facts, that's the PIO. He's checking his facts before he does the interview. She's already got her questions in her mind. She knows what she's going to ask and what she isn't. He's the one that's checking his facts, and I want to say good for him. Stick to your facts and don't get waylaid no matter what the reporter asks. Rule number 6, look the part. Okay, what do we mean by looking the part? Dress for credibility. Most of the time when we get dressed in the morning to go someplace, we ask ourselves if we look attractive, if we look appealing, if we feel good about how we look. I would submit those are nice considerations, but more important is to dress for credibility. Ask yourself, is the way I'm dressed consistent with my message, with what I'm trying to say? If you're a uniformed responder of some kind, always wear the uniform. But it depends on the situation, depends on the circumstances. Dress appropriately for the topic. You can really look foolish if you go to a scene that is, say a wildland fire, and you're wearing a suit and tie. And the problem with that, of course, is that you may be saying something really important, but if your dress is inconsistent with the other visuals they see around you, they're not going to hear a word you say. And that's really the problem. Take a minute to look in the mirror. I mean, even if you are at the scene of a wildland fire and you're wearing the whole outfit with the helmet and the whole bit, take a minute and look just to make sure you don't have a little bit of your lunch on your chin or whatever it might be. Again, because that photographer may or may not tell you, and if they don't tell you, and there is some kind of thing like that that is a distraction, the public won't hear your message. And so take a moment. It may look like vanity. I say it looks smart. Look in a mirror before you do an interview. Color is a good thing. A little splash of like this tie here, very beautiful golden color. But you wouldn't wear a whole suit like that, that's a nice, it's just a nice splash of color. Most of the time, simple dark colors, simple lines look best for most men and women. Okay, rule number 7, appropriate body language. More and more you see pundits on on television now when they're evaluating people, especially like political situations where people are debating or something. And those pundits will say, this is how they looked when they did that. They'll pass judgment on how they behaved rather than what they said. And in fact, to the point that I've actually seen some pundits say, I think that person is lying. I saw one pundit recently who said that she thought this particular politician was lying because he was a lip licker. And I wonder what that means. And she said he would say something and then lick his lip as if to erase what he said. I think that's a bit of a leap, but I don't know. I'm not a body language expert. But keep in mind, people judge you by the way you hold yourself, by the way you present yourself, by what they see as well as what they hear. Eye contact is hugely important. Right now, as I'm talking to you, I'm looking directly into a camera lens. I'm having a conversation with a circle. I mean, it's a pretty weird thing to do. It feels odd, but it looks pretty natural, doesn't it? I mean, you and I are making eye contact if you're watching this right now. And eye contact is very important. If I look away or trail, you wonder what I'm looking at, right? It's very distracting. So if you're doing an interview in which you are supposed to look into the camera, meaning you're probably getting one of those earpiece interviews, where you're talking to somebody in New York, maintain that eye contact with the camera. But I'll tell you, most of the time, eye contact with the reporter. Most of the time, your interviews will be with a reporter and you look at them, and they will then get the camera position to get the most out of your interview, your conversation. Your posture is a big thing. If you speak in terms of you're speaking with authority about reassuring the public that all is well, and if you're hunkered down and you're kind of, your head's down and you're kind of sinking into yourself, it contradicts what you're saying. And people will believe what you do more than they'll believe what you say. Stand tall and speak with authority. Your voice will also sound better if you have good posture. Make sure your expression is appropriate. And that kind of goes without saying, I suppose. Obviously, you don't want a big grin on your face if you're at the scene of a mass fatality. But on the other hand, you don't want to look so grim that you look like you're about to lose control. You have to find a fine line. If you're a responder, you've got to be in control for the survivors. And so, you know, like I said, it has to be an appropriate expression, and only you can decide that at the scene with the individual situations. Here's another tip I have about body language. Ask somebody who loves you if you have any nervous habits, okay? They'll tell you probably, well, yeah, I have noticed over the years you do this, that, or the other thing. We all do something. One thing that I do is I have a tendency to rock back and forth when I'm nervous, or even when I'm excited, or sometimes even if I'm just bored. I have a tendency to rock. I don't know, sometimes I think maybe I'm lopsided or something. I don't know. But I had a cameraman tell me once, put one foot in front of the other. And that way, you're not likely to rock back and forth. I do that now as just, it's a natural thing for me to do because it has served me well over the years. So do give some thought. You've probably got something, maybe you chew your lip or any one of a number of things. Find out about it and work on it, because I'll tell you, that nervous habit, whatever it may be, will dominate your interview, and people may not hear what you say. The voice of authority, law enforcement officer, stands there with confidence, good posture. And I like this picture of this young man here. He just looks sure of himself, not necessarily, you know, overly cocky or anything, just confident. It's appropriate for what he's about to do. At least it looks like it is. Rule number 8 is something that kind of surprises a lot of people when I say you have rights. You have a right to be comfortable. You have a right to prepare for an interview. And in fact, you have a right to say no. You don't have to do that interview if you're not ready, if you're not prepared. In fact, I would recommend you do say no if you're not prepared. I remember one time I agreed to do an interview. I was teaching a workshop at the time. A reporter shows up and he says, okay, we're set up down here. Can you just step out, do a quick interview, and then we'll let you get back to your class. So I turned on a video or something, I don't know what it was, and then I went down to do the interview, and my heart just sank because he had set up his camera on a street corner at high noon, traffic going both ways, the sun coming right down on top of my head, casting shadows, you know, hot as blazes. It was in the summertime, and a public sidewalk behind me. It just couldn't have been a worse situation. And I'm standing there letting him clip the microphone on, and every instinct told me, don't do this, but I did it anyway. So the next day, I did have a message I wanted to get out to the public, and so I went ahead and did it. Well, the next day, I ran into a coworker in the hallway, and he just looked at me and said, you shouldn't have done that interview. And I said, why? Tell me why. And he said, I didn't hear a word you said. And he said, did you know there was a guy behind you waving at the camera? And I said, no, I didn't see that. Well, the photographer hadn't told me. And he said also he could barely hear me because of traffic noise. He said it was just a big distracting, silly thing. So it was a lesson learned, okay? Learn from my mistake, okay? If you don't feel right about doing that interview, don't do it. Speak up, and I think you'll be glad you did. Rule number 9, I'd like to say, goes without saying, but it really doesn't. Be truthful. Never, ever, ever lie. There was an episode on the West Wing once, and you know, CJ was a great PIO for the White House, right? But I remember there was one episode in which she deliberately lied to the media. And I remember thinking, how many people across the country watched that episode and thought that's the way PIOs do business? Well, I'm here to tell you that is not the way we do business. PIOs do not lie. We should never, ever, ever lie to the public or to the media, because all you've got really is your credibility. And you will get caught in a lie, and when you do, your credibility is gone. Always tell the truth. And rule number 10, remember your audience. I want you to look back at these two visuals and give some thought to this. That PIO there on the right-hand side is not talking to reporter Yvette Fernandez. He's talking through her and through that camera to that public. sitting at home watching. You speak through the reporter, not to the reporter. Keep in mind who your audience is. So let's do a quick review. 1 through 10. Number 1, prepare. Always, always, always prepare. 2, interviews are not conversations. Make that distinction and use those distinctions to serve you well. Number 3, stay on message. Stick to your guns, bridge back, put a hook and a flag in front of your message, call attention to them, and stick to them. Number 4, speak officially. Speak the official line. You're speaking for your agency or you're speaking for an incident. You're not speaking for yourself. Just the facts. Stick to the facts. Don't estimate, don't guess, don't speculate. Number 6, look the part. Dress appropriately for the situation. Number 7, think about how your body is behaving as well as how your voice is projecting. They're two very important things that work together. And if they are contradictory, people will believe what they see much more likely than what they hear. Number 8, exercise your rights. If it doesn't feel right, don't do it. Number 9, always be truthful. And number 10, remember the public is your audience. It's not the media. Speak to the public. I'm Karen Terrell. I believe if you do those things, you're going to ace that media interview. And there's many more types of video training available to you inside the PIO Academy. Thanks for being with us. Come back soon and come back often to the PIO Academy.